Welcome to our podcast.
I completely forgot to record.
No, we're getting off to a great start here. Is that brown face? Are we okay with this?
He's one of those people when he starts talking, you just listen.
Yay! The crowd goes wild.
Like a real arrogant prick. That's what I'm going for. An elitist scumbag. Most of this podcast is going to suck, by the way. Hello and welcome to another wonderful edition of Murga Gina Podcast. I am your host, AJ Murga. And today I've got a very special guest. It's her first time on the show. Some might say a virgin experience, but only in our hearts and minds. It's Gina Polimeni.
Yay! The crowd goes wild.
Yay, yay. My dear friend, Gina Polimeni, how long have we been friends? Like 30-some years? It's unbelievable.
Over 25 years. I mean, we became friends freshmen in high school, so quite a while.
It's like 29 years because this is our 25th anniversary of high school, graduating high school.
Crazy.
Can you believe that? It's unbelievable.
Crazy.
Boy.
We're old.
We're so old. Yeah, anyway, Gina, I'm so glad that you're here. It's your first time here, and we're just going to be hanging out talking about, several different things. We're going to be talking about what Gina does for a living. It's very exciting, and it goes along a little bit with this book that has kind of changed my life. It's called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's by Bessel van der Kolk. Yes. And most people are probably have heard of the book, but we're gonna break it down a little bit today. Talk about some of its more interesting topics and why it's kind of touched me personally, and share some stories about that. But first, Gina, I'd like to get to know a little bit more about you. Have our audience get to know a little bit more about you. That is. And tell us about what you do and some of your education, experience, background in what you do.
Yeah, so first I want to thank you for having me on the show.
Anytime.
I'm really excited for you and all the things that you're exploring right now.
Thank you.
On your social media, but I'm just really proud of you, and I'm really excited to be doing more podcasts with you and talking about things that I'm super passionate about. Because along with you and The Body Keeps the Score, like these things have significantly changed my life. And so it's not just what I help my clients do, it's also what I have done for myself. So I am a therapist. I started my business almost 4.5 years ago. I think this will be my 4th year.
Wow.
I just got my LPC a year ago. But before that, I graduated with my master's in 2019, but then I started going on my own healing journey, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I also had to do a lot of deep healing myself. And through those experiences, it really started to develop this world where I wanted to bring sort of the spirituality aspects of life with psychology, with the science, and how all the parts of our body, mind, body, spirit, really need to work together. There isn't this separation. And so that's what I do. I work with people individually. I do events. I bring in sound healing. I bring in Reiki healing. I bring in psychology, theories. I bring in somatic breath work, and really teach people how to regulate their nervous system, create new beliefs, new patterns in their life, and create more awareness, because I believe the more awareness we can have about ourselves, the more freedom we can actually have within our lives, the more we get to enjoy life and just experience joy and happiness instead of allowing these things to drag us down and kind of create this dark cloud.
Well said. I mean, there's so much to dive into there, and we will kind of back up a little bit and go piece by piece through some of it. But first I want to say you're always welcome on the show. Thank you so much for coming. And I want to personally attest to the fact that you are fantastic at what you do. You have helped me so much through my life as a friend and also professionally, and you really do practice what you preach. So I respect that very, very much, and I think anybody who knows you would 100% agree with what I just said. So that's wonderful. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, and I love that you do what you do. You brought up one thing. You brought up many things, but one thing that really stuck out is the importance of the body, the mind, all being in tune with each other, the energy work that you do. Can you touch on that a little bit? What does that exactly mean to somebody who's maybe doesn't really understand what we say when we say that, and what's the importance of it?
How do I break this down? Small pieces.
Right.
Well, I guess the easiest way to describe it would be essentially when we're born, you look at yourself as we are a whole being, right? When you're born, you are fully connected, like mentally, physically, like you are feeling everything. You're looking for guidance from the world around you, from your parents. Like I like to look at it as we're pure light. That's the way I describe it. We're born, we're pure light. What happens though is because of generational things, because of the environments we grow up in, what happens is because we're trying to co-regulate. When I say co-regulation, I mean we don't know how to operate in the world, so we are looking to our caregivers to help calm us, to make us feel safe, to bring us comfort, right? And we're not conscious at this moment, so we're just feeling throughout. And what happens is we might grow up in environments that don't feel safe, or we're not getting our essential needs met as babies. And so what happens is our mind starts to turn parts of ourselves off, essentially. So we're not feeling overwhelmed by fear or the lack of safety. What happens is as we move through life, we start to dim this authentic part that we are, like who we actually are. We start to develop coping skills and patterns that will help us be safe, right? And so we suppress parts of ourselves and we disconnect our brain from our body, essentially. Our brains are so intelligent, our bodies are so intelligent, but our bodies get so overwhelmed by energy and overwhelmed by emotion that a part of our brain is like, this is not safe, we need to shut this part down. And that's where we create this disconnect between our mind and our body. He talks a lot about it in the book too, which we'll get more to. But essentially, when we're disconnecting that piece, now we're operating solely from this logical part of our brain, but we're being disconnected from this also intelligent part of us, our being, that gives us a lot of warning signs, intuition. When we respond to traumas, we actually respond in a biological way first before our minds. But all of that is just so disconnected. And then, you move 30, 40 years down the road, and these things that have kept us safe, that have helped us grow and achieve and be motivated or driven, stops working. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes, now we can't operate in our present life because these traumas or these things that we suppressed actually like kind of trap us in time. Mm-hmm. And then those things start to come up in the present moment and tell us that we're not safe when we actually are, but it overrides our system. Mm-hmm. Because the present us doesn't have full control over what's going on within our body.
That's I think really well explained, and the way that like kind of the simple version that I took away from that is we're not trusting ourselves because of what we experienced. Our brains are essentially lying to us, because you kind of spoke about our intuition and our gut and things like that, and you're right. Through trauma, we learn to not trust our gut and our kind of core self anymore. And the book does talk quite a bit about that. He talks, one thing that was validating for me, because I grew up in an unsafe home and got a lot of childhood trauma from it. We all have, of course, traumas in our lives. Most of us experience in childhood. And so mine was just different, but in a way that he talks about in the book, that he compares it to like war veterans, people who've fought in war. They come home with PTSD, and that's kind of what we've typically like thought of in your classical sense of PTSD. You experience a traumatic event, and then now you have PTSD. But when you grow up in that experience, it can really change your brain chemistry when you're trying to essentially do what you just said, learn how to trust yourself, or how to, we unlearn those things, I suppose, at a young age. And so when it was validating for me to hear that children survivors of childhood trauma are essentially have equal levels of PTSD, just in different ways. And I'm wondering, how do you look at something like that? Varying levels of PTSD, or how would you maybe treat a child different than an adult, or what comes up for you in some of that?
The biggest thing that comes up for me as you're talking about this is I keep thinking nervous system, yeah. Nervous system, mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Because a lot of people discount the nervous system, and the nervous system is essentially the core piece of this. Because what happens is essentially there's like a baseline of our nervous system. And Peter Levine talks a lot about this with trauma, essentially. Mm. we operate a lot like animals in the sense if there's a lot of videos out there, if you look, when animals experience a danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
They experience different types of ways of protecting themselves: fight, flight, freeze, right? They either freeze in the moment, or they run, or they fight, right? But what that's doing, it activates the central nervous system, okay? So like this happens in kids too, and in adults. So it's not so much about treating it differently as much as, are you working with more trauma or present trauma? So with a child, you might be working with more present trauma, like they don't have as much as somebody who's 40. You have a lot more layers to work through. You have a lot more patterns to change, right? So that's as far as like, it's not so much about treating it differently as far as how much you're having to operate with. So you go into fight, flight, freeze, right? Let's say the body freezes. So there's a video out there of a cheetah that like bites this doe's neck, and the deer goes limp, but they're not dead. Well, the cheetah lets the deer alone and runs off because he's like, well, I'm not hunting anymore, right? Essentially, he thinks it's already dead. You then see the deer kind of come to, and he shakes. His body starts to shake. What he's doing in that moment is there's an activation of the central nervous system, right? Anxiety, fear, the fight, flight, freeze. The shaking is the re-regulation of the body going into the parasympathetic nervous system of rest and relaxation. So essentially, what we miss through childhood all the way up is we miss the reset. So a lot of times we think of the big traumas: physical abuse, sexual abuse, serious accidents, like these big things, but not getting our needs met can essentially make us feel unsafe, which can create a heighten of anxiety, right? We feel unsafe, we go into this trauma response. If we do not learn how to release the trauma or the emotion or the shaking, right? The energy from the body, it gets stored. And then it happens again and again and again. And now you're stacking on top of each other. And now you're teaching your body that it's not safe to release. And now your body's consistently getting dysregulated, but there is no reset. So children and adults, the same thing happens in both.
Gotcha.
It's just a matter of how much you're working with. But you would treat it the same. How do we start to get you in your body to release it?
And that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you more attack the problem rather than the person with the problem. And you mentioned re-regulating your body and things like that, and maybe the importance of suppressing your emotions and your trauma versus getting it out, having those somatic releases. Obviously, I think we can all kind of gather the importances, but in your line of work or just in your knowledge, like, does that stuff turn into generational trauma, cancer, like whatever, like, what comes up when I say that?
When we suppress our emotions, it gets a hold. It stores in our muscles, it stores in our bones, it stores in our cells. And in every person it's completely different. However, in my experience, and I can only speak from my experience, I'm not really sure about how you can actually prove that, like, the trauma. I know that people have had pain and then they release a lot of their trauma and they have significant releases. They no longer have pain, right? People have been very ill. Dr. Joe Dispenza does a lot of stuff around people who the Supernatural, that book, I think you're aware of that book too, where there have been people who have utilized meditation and literally changing the biology. So when you're changing belief patterns, when you're releasing your trauma, you are actually changing the biology of your body. You can heal cancer, you can heal illness. So there has been research and correlation of like suppression of emotion, trauma, holding on to those things, continuing negative belief patterns, things like that can actually impact our health on various levels. Now, that's not the case 100% of the time.
Sure.
However, there are a lot of cases where we can actually physically manifest subconsciously issues in our body because of what we're holding on to.
It makes a lot of sense, and I can definitely relate. Personally, like I'm lucky enough to not have any, chronic illnesses or anything like that. But I've definitely always just been really tight. My body's been super tight. I've had to go to doctors and physical therapists and massage therapists, like my pretty much my entire life, because of just always being in this like hyper vigilant state that I kind of grew up in. And even so, even on like a small scale, a smaller scale than what you're talking about. The supernatural book that you mentioned as well, that's another good one. Maybe that's a whole nother podcast right there. But just touching on it a little bit because you brought it up. When it comes to getting yourself into a place mentally where you can be mindful enough in order to like actually start the ball rolling on real healing and real somatic releases, what is a mindfulness practice like that look like to you from your opinion? And or I know it's probably
Mhm.
different for everybody, but what does mindfulness really mean?
I think you're going to get different answers for this question, but for me specifically and how I explain it to people, mindfulness is really learning how to be with yourself unapologetically and in full acceptance.
Mm,
What that means is when we talk about mindfulness, mindfulness is about being in the present moment. The meditation piece of that, how do we learn to sit with ourselves in full acceptance? Right?
mhm.
So when somebody sits down to meditation, they automatically think they need to just turn their brain off. Like, oh, I should be in complete silence.
Yeah.
Okay, if you've never meditated before, you're going to have a horrible experience doing that because you're going to be like, I'm doing it wrong. I'm not doing it right.
You can be very
Like
bored.
things, right?
Yeah.
People get really frustrated because every meditation session is going to be different. What it's about is like, how can I learn to sit with myself? You start with like 3 to 5 minutes. How can I learn to just sit with myself and acknowledge all the things that are going on in my head, but not let those things control the next movement, like me getting up or the next action? Like, how do I learn to just, okay, I see the thoughts, I recognize they're going on, and then can you divert the thought? Okay, I hear the thoughts, I see the thoughts, I'm coming back to my breathing. Focus on something in the present moment. Now, what you're doing is you're teaching yourself how to control the thought
Mhm.
instead of just allowing yourself to get lost in the thinking,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because you don't, that's where it's like when we get lost in the thinking. So, really, sitting in meditation for me is learning how to like be with myself, regardless of all the chatter and the crap that's going on in my head. And then, how do I redirect to the present moment? Now I'm teaching my brain to do like two different things. Now I'm starting to gain more control of my thoughts. That's the biggest piece, is getting out of autopilot.
Yes, and autopilot is, I think, a really good way to describe it because, like you said, so controlling the thoughts and not letting our thoughts control us. I think that's probably something that everyone can relate to. Certainly, every adult. How many times have we been too in our head and we've either done something or we've not done something because we've been letting our fearful thoughts or anxious thoughts control us? And something that you said that I wrote it down here from the book. There's a quote from the book, something you said reminded me of it. Once you start approaching your body with curiosity rather than fear, everything shifts. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so very true. That's a huge takeaway for me from this book. And in my life personally, once I kind of started shedding that fear that I always grew up with, and I just, sat with myself and didn't judge myself, and I got curious, everything opened up. Doors opened up. My heart opened up to the world and all kinds of things. And so yeah, I agree completely. What are your thoughts though about what he says here? Curiosity rather than fear, or some of the other stuff that you were mentioning.
Well, real fast, I want to
Yeah,
go back
yeah.
to something that you said about once I got curious and I started kind of, exploring
Mm-hmm.
and witnessing what I've been through and allowed myself to go into those places that feel scary.
Mm-hmm.
One piece of that that I think is really important, that I do think is true for you, correct me if am I wrong, is that we need to be witnessed in it first.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a piece that I think a lot of people are missing is a lot of times we think we can do it by ourselves, we can do it alone. However, there's something to be said about being witnessed in the pain. And often we try to look to people that are closest to us to witness us in that, but they don't understand. It triggers them or they're not comfortable with their emotions. And then they try to continue to shut us down. And that's one thing I've noticed with every person that I've worked with. If I can allow a space for them to just be witnessed and validate their pain and the experience that they went through, that is the beginning piece of being like, oh, I was seen. I'm being seen in that.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's like, we often think we can do these things alone, and we also need to be taught some of these things that we've shut down from another person that's safe.
Yep.
And then that allows us to start the exploration within ourselves too. Because if you think about it, if you need to climb a mountain, right? Or if you're going to go climb Mount St. Helens, right? That's what I did last year.
Okay.
You don't just go climb a mountain,
Yeah.
right? The idea is great. I'm not just going to go tackle it. I need to find people who've done it before me. I need to be trained, right? I need to get my body in shape. I need to understand my body, the capacity of my body. I need to train it. I need to like explore it and understand the mountain, understand myself. Like there's different aspects to it, right? You don't just go climb a mountain.
No.
Right.
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up is because it's the same thing. Like if you've been suppressing yourself for years, you don't feel any of your emotions, you're not comfortable with your anger, like you're scared to death of exploring the trauma of looking back and really feeling it. There's a fear that comes with that. You can't force your body into something that it's cut off for a long time. You have to teach it that it's safe. And so when you work with somebody like a therapist, you're teaching your body how to relax enough that it's safe to start the exploration of these things that are scary. So I really think that that's an important piece because you cannot force your body into something that it is not ready for or that it has created walls.
Yep.
You have to learn, you have to start to trust your body again. That comes with the connection. You have to start to get your mind to slow, to connect enough to your body to start letting it down to then begin the healing process or releasing those things that we're scared of.
Yeah.
I just think that's an important piece.
Oh, I
to
agree.
add.
I agree, and I'd like to add on it just real quick here, because I agree with you. That is accurate for my experience, and I had to get myself into a safe environment for several years as an adult, as well as have a bit of a call it a spiritual awakening, call it an emotional breakdown, whatever you want to call it. I had to have an awakening, a level of awareness kind of suddenly rushed to me about the situation that I had been in for most of my life. And because I saw myself differently than I think the rest of the world did. And once I finally had that realization, that's when things started coming back to me. And that's the point that I wanted to get to is once my body felt safe enough, my mind started remembering things that I had suppressed for literally decades. And it's really interesting. It still happens today. Like just a couple of days ago, I got a new piece of an old memory that I had suppressed for literally since childhood. And I just think it's fascinating that that the body and the mind, once they get on the same page, it seems like anything's possible.
It really is. And that is the important piece to come back to the meditation too. You have to learn to ground your body enough. You have to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. You have to relax enough. You're going to gain more clarity. We live in a society where it's go, 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 go. We avoid, we dismiss, we don't pay attention. We're this far out, and there's so much information that's happening in the present moment that for us, cues, information that we are just missing and bypassing. And that's the place where the real shifts happen and where the clarity comes is when we can allow ourselves to relax, right? And like that's a lot of the work I do with my clients is really trying to get their bodies to a safe place to be able to start getting into the things that they're wanting to release. But I can't force that process.
Yeah. Well,
right. And neither can they.
Totally. I agree. You can't force that process. And I will say from my own experience with you, you were one of the driving forces behind my awakening. You were one of the people who were there for me, and made me feel safe enough for long enough in order for that to finally, become a thing for me, which has ultimately changed my life. It only happened, I don't know, 4 years ago now, 3, 4 years ago, but just in that amount of time, I've come so far. It's been an emotional roller coaster, but I finally feel like I'm back to the person that I used to see myself as, but this time I really am that person, is what it feels like. And so thank you for being, for being part of that journey for me. But
I love that.
yeah, but I just wanted to interject that. Was there something else another thought that you had?
Just the importance of awareness. The one thing I try to bring my clients really is like, I don't, no offense to any of my clients, but I don't want to be working with you guys for 10 years, right?
Sure.
The real goal of the work I do is to bring enough awareness. So you, for example, bringing you a lot of awareness, teaching you that your body is safe, teaching you that you can explore your emotions, right? It's underneath the anger. Like your anger is your surface. What's actually underneath that drives the anger, allowing you to explore that, bring awareness, understanding your own trauma, understanding your own beliefs, how they're being projected outwardly. And when you can gain enough awareness around that, now you start understanding the world. Now you start understanding other people. Now you're understanding yourself. That's where the freedom comes, because as soon as you can start like decoding all of that, life is so much easier and you understand things more, right? You don't take things personally. So creating more awareness is really a key in like that the healing process. I believe that's how I usually navigate that.
Absolutely. And along with that, I think, your awareness grows and your mental state changes for the better. But I think it also has an impact on your energetic state. Your body just naturally falls in line when you get more aligned with your mind, and or vice versa. And I have noticed, from personal experiences myself, since going through my awareness, I've also seen it firsthand with you. Your energy can attract other good energies. And whereas in the past, you're right, because I did struggle with anger and anxiety and things like that, and it would attract that. I would go to places and I would always get bad service, or I would go to places and I would always feel like I got screwed over. And they say, if you meet one asshole in a day, like they're the asshole. If you meet 10, you're the asshole, And I think I was the asshole for quite a while there. And and it ebbs and flows. It goes through stages. But yeah, I think there is a shift with your energy as well, don't you think?
100%. There's two things. Like one is perspective. Your perspective changes. When your perspective changes, you don't see things as like they're being an asshole. You see it in a different way, which then changes that energy. The second thing is to come back to the suppression. If you're carrying something that you're not aware of, like I use this with my clients all the time. I'm like, have you ever gone up to a person and they're like, I'm not an angry person. And you're like, okay, well, your energy is telling me a very different story, right? People are walking around in the world projecting subconscious, like unconscious energy that they're holding on to in their body. The more you start to filter, the more you start to release that energy and understand that energy, the more it shifts. And then you're not being angry, or you're not carrying that energy that's like, people get defensive when they don't think they're being attacking or aggressive, but the other person's like, whoa, right? And it's the energy that's being emanated. So kind of what you're saying is that you might have gone to those restaurants thinking like, I'm fine, but your energy might have been giving off something very different that created this that triggered the other person's trauma.
Yep.
The other person's anger or issues, which then their energy is now moving towards you. So now you're having this not just mental, physical, like this energetic physical push towards each other that we emanate off. So that's a whole other thing in itself.
Oh yeah.
Energy is incredible, but we carry a lot of energy that we are just not aware of.
Yep, 100%. And I laugh because I can think of so many instances in my own life of just, experiencing that exactly, going out and just being like, what the hell is wrong with everyone? Can't these people see that I am perfect and they are messed up? But obviously that's not the case, right? So
I love it.
that's really funny. To me
Mm,
anyway. It's not a funny situation if you're actually living in it. If you're not
no,
aware of it, it can be very confusing. It can add to the
hard.
anxiety. It can add to the disassociation. You have a lack of community when you're like that very often. And that not to change the subject too much, but that brought me to another thing that the book had talked about that I wrote down. This idea of top down versus medication versus bottom up. And top down is about talk therapy and having experiences with others and building a network of people that you can be mindful with and share your experiences with. And I just think if you're in that mind state that we were just talking about, you probably don't have that. And it's so important. Isolation was a huge deal for me in order to get into the biggest depression of my life. And ultimately, socialization is one of the many things that helped me dig my way out of it.
Well, I mean, I guess I would give you this question is like,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think people who struggle
Mm-hmm.
with their emotions or in that state, why do you think they remain isolated? Why do you think they don't talk about their stuff with other people?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Right?
yeah. I can imagine it's a self feeding, self looping prophecy. Self fulfilling prophecy. But I can imagine.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, well, think about it too. Like, so Andrew, we're good enough friends that if
Hmm.
you were to act a certain way, I'd be like, hey, like I
Yes.
might call you out on your shit, right?
Yes.
Or if you come to me and you ask me something because I care, because we've been friends for so long, I'm going to give you an honest answer.
Hmm.
But that means that you might have to look at something that you don't want to look at
Yeah.
or take accountability for your own actions. And
Yes.
that's the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is they want to stay in this victim mentality.
Hmm.
Really, the way we move about in the world and how we perceive it and how we're interacting with it when we get older, like, yes, there is victimization like when we are younger, and there are things that, yes, we have been a victim maybe at different points in our lives. However, when we carry that thing and hold it as ammunition, we are now creating our own
Hmm.
misery. And
Hmm.
at what point do we decide that, oh, wait, I'm doing this to myself?
Hmm.
I may be creating this in my relationships by not looking at it, by not getting help. And now I am the creator of my own universe at that particular time,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
There's that accountability piece that people struggle with of like having to own up to like, oh, I'm putting expectations on these people,
Hmm.
unrealistic expectations, or where's my part? Like we all have a part, and
Yep.
people really don't want to look at that because that's a really hard thing to sit with,
Hmm.
of knowing that we have a part in a lot of the things that end up like that are happening in our present day life.
Yes, 100%. That makes me think two things. I was just having this conversation the other day. I don't remember who with, but we were talking about how, yes, when you're a child, you can be victimized and you're a victim. I mean, when you're a child, you're a child. You don't know any better. And you also don't have a whole lot of agency over your life. Your parents control everything. But once you get to a certain age and you have agency, you're an adult, you're taking care of yourself, at that point or at some point, if you're still a victim, you're choosing to be, on some level. You may be subconsciously or unconsciously choosing that. Yeah.
Unconsciously,
Yes,
usually.
exactly. But on some level, there's got to be, like you said, some accountability that you have to take in order to get yourself out of that place. Whereas if you're a child and you're stuck in trauma, that's not going to happen. And I would never expect a
Mhm.
child to do that.
It's so complex though. Like, yes, at some point we get agency. We also have to work through what are the beliefs that I created, what are the
Mm-hmm.
coping skills I created, which is why it's difficult the older that you get when you start navigating through this work.
Mm-hmm.
Like and starting to see these things is like, oh my God, look at these belief systems that I've created for myself based on these past experiences that really aren't true, but they're so ingrained and created these neural pathways in my brain that it literally is seems like truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's just so many aspects of navigating there. Like, yes, you have agency,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't just change like that. There's
Yes.
like things that you have to unravel
Mm-hmm.
and then create new neural pathways. It's possible. I am all this stuff that we're talking about. I just need to say this. Everything that we're talking about, I have experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
I've created new beliefs, new pathways. I've healed so much of my trauma,
Mm-hmm.
like so many of my fears. I've literally changed the biology of my body.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I look at pictures from the past and I'm like, I don't even recognize that girl
Yeah.
because literally my face is different, my eyes are different. Like literally this stuff changes your biology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's insane, and it's like it's hard. It's hard work, and I still work on it every day. Like it gets easier,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you have to create new neural pathways, and it's hard. But
Absolutely.
you can do it. Like I can do it. Anybody can do it.
That's how I feel too. You know, if I can, you know, go through what I've gone through and come out on the other side okay, you know, I feel like it's possible for most people. But not to say that I went through, you know, harder things than anybody else did. But it was hard for me and different, you know, in its own ways. But
Mm-hmm.
I go back to the other thing I was going to mention was, you know, you said that people have a hard time looking in the mirror, looking at themselves, and that's really what I think starts the ball rolling. At least it did in my situation, and that's when I go back to once you look at yourself with curiosity rather than fear, everything shifts,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to really take that first step of dropping the fear enough or raising the curiosity enough to take that leap of faith and just say, you know what, I am going to sit in silence for 10 minutes and think about my life, my place in the world, or whatever, or let your mind go
Mm-hmm.
blank and see where it goes, and have the courage to follow it without judgment or fear. And it is easier said than done, especially when you first get started. But it can be life changing.
But I also think that comes back. So I want to bring the curiosity and the community together
Mm-hmm.
because I think that loops back these last two questions that you've asked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Community is really important because if you have people, a lot of times when we are struggling, we want to hermit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to figure this out. I
Mm-hmm.
want to figure this out on our own,
Yep.
right? But what happens is we get in like a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is oftentimes until we build enough awareness
Mm-hmm.
and trust within ourselves, we can't really maybe see.
Mm-hmm.
I call it you need to scratch the record, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to bring a different perspective. And if you're trying to figure that out on your own, sometimes you often get trapped in this spiraling circle and you can be there for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of having community or people that you trust
Mm-hmm.
is that reaching out to those people and talking to them and sometimes even saying it out loud and being heard, we can create our own, we can scratch it ourselves,
Yep.
right? We
Yep.
scratch the record ourselves. But it's about that's why connection is important too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're connecting with people, you're naturally releasing dopamine and serotonin by connecting deeply with other people in these levels.
Yep.
And having that trust. It's also teaching us trust, validation, some of these things that have been broken numerous times in our lives. And so the community aspect and having people in our lives is important because it allows us to get out of the looping,
Yep. Yep.
right? And that in itself is an addiction.
Yep.
We are addicted to the loop, right? We're scared to get out of this loop because it's comforting. It's what we know, right?
Yep. I've been there many times in my life. That loop of hermiting, and you're right. It feeds itself, and it is really hard to break that cycle. And you know, I ultimately got to a place where I was just so sick of it, and I wanted to try something else. But it really wasn't even that long ago. You know, this time last year, the last thing I would have wanted to do was start a YouTube channel. Like I did not want to. I did not want
Talking to people.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk to people this time. You just literally this time last year, I did not want to talk to people. I did not want to be socializing. But now, you know, a lot can change in a short amount of time. And I remember things started to change for me. It was around last October when I got pretty serious about my mental health, more so than before, and it kind of went to a new level. And one of the things I had to do was I started volunteering. I went on a hurricane relief trip with a local church. That hurricane that came through. Well, that was a couple years ago now, but I did stuff like that. I volunteered at a food bank, and I just forced myself to get out of the house and meet people. And now here it is, you know, a year later, I'm, you know, got a podcast and a YouTube channel, and it's very early, but that one of the reasons why I started doing this stuff is because I really do want to keep going with the community. I figured, okay, I was successful in getting out of my house and building a little bit of a community in my area. Now let's take the next step and do it online. You know, let's put myself out there online and let's meet people online and share some of these kinds of vulnerabilities and stories about myself and see who it resonates with, and maybe there will be another tribe for me out there that I've never even met yet, you know. So
Yeah.
and that's exciting. And so getting out of that cycle can be very empowering.
Well, and community looks different to others. So for me personally, like, yes, I have a lot of people in my life, a lot of acquaintances, I work with clients, but really when it comes down to like the people I trust that I call when like shit's hitting the fan,
Mm-hmm.
I have a very small group of people
Sure.
when that happens, right? So it's like community can look different for everybody. I know people who have 10 to 15 to 20 people that they, lean on, like big communities, right? So I also just want to normalize, it doesn't have to be, when I say community, it doesn't have to be this huge
Yes.
thing that we often think of when it's community. It's just, do you have a core group of people, at least one or two people that you can really rely on if you need, that you trust? And like that's just like a key piece. Like it
For
it
sure.
looks different for everybody in that aspect.
For sure. And well, my wife and I were literally just talking the other day about like caregiver fatigue and things like that. And you bring up, at least one or two other people, and I think you're right. I mean, that's how it starts. Just one or two other people, and that's how it started with me. But when you have just one other person for too long and you lean on them too much, it can enter into this place of caregiver fatigue or something like that. And you're
Yeah.
you're now like this one person is your everything, and it becomes this codependent kind of toxic thing. So there is another like slippery slope and fine line even within a lot of this stuff. It's not black and white. There's a lot of gray here, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm smiling. I want to start laughing because as soon as you said that, I'm like, there's more than that's going on. Like,
Yeah.
if you ever find that you're in a caregiving relationship or you start to become codependent with another person,
Hmm.
that's more about your own people pleasing
Hmm.
skills,
Hmm.
what validation you're getting from being the caregiver,
Yep.
what needs it's fulfilling,
Hmm.
and that you've learned how to co-regulate with another person. You don't know how to do it on your own,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So,
100%.
like, that's my mind is
Hmm.
it's like a map. So it's like I hear what you say, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but that means all of these things,
Yes.
right? But again, it's a good opportunity to be like, okay, I'm getting caregiver fatigue.
Hmm.
Okay, I need to set some boundaries in these relationships, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I still struggle with that,
Sure, we all
right?
do.
In some of my friendships where it's like I can show up and show up and show up and show up and show up,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, okay, there's like it's one-sided, like I need to like set some boundaries, right?
Hmm.
It's not balanced.
Right.
But that's on me. I haven't said what I need to say. I haven't asked for my own needs, like I
Hmm.
haven't set my boundaries,
Hmm.
right? And so it's like, okay, I need to do this.
Hmm.
And then I also need to create space and time for myself to recharge.
100%. Yeah, all of that I completely agree with. And you brought up, I think, the first time we've heard this word, and it's such an important word, boundaries. For me especially, I had no boundaries when I was a child, because of the situation that I grew up in. And then you get older, and now one of the reasons why I would have considered myself a bit of a jerk for a while there is because I didn't know what boundaries were. And so I would get in other people's business, or I would invite people too deep into my business. And then things would get awkward, or people would get hurt, or I would hurt myself. And yeah, so just the importance of boundaries. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, I was thinking relationships because there's boundaries
Hmm.
and there's this honesty piece.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of people who give, but they never share their frustrations. And in a way, they're being dishonest in that's one thing I had to learn is that I wasn't being honest in my relationships. I would harbor resentment
Hmm.
and I wouldn't share when I was hurt or frustrated.
Hmm.
That's me being dishonest.
Hmm.
That's a hard realization for people to look at too, right?
Sure.
We're going to cover a lot of this stuff in relationships, but
Yes.
boundaries are not for the other person. Boundaries are for us.
Mm-hmm.
And boundaries are a way for us to say, I respect myself and I want you to respect that as well.
Yep.
Like, please respect my boundary of, I can't do this anymore. It's hurting me,
Hmm.
right? Here is my boundary. That is for me. That is not for you to change. If you decide you want to respect that boundary,
Hmm.
that's for you to decide to like make that decision and then change the behavior,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
The hard part about boundaries is often people set boundaries but they're not really ready for that boundary because there's more wounding underneath that.
Hmm.
That then what happens is somebody steps over that boundary
Hmm.
and they allow it. Now there's shame and
Yes.
self-abandonment that we're dealing with,
Yes.
right? and then we're continuing to show up, we're not respecting our own boundary, right? And that actually becomes more detrimental for us because we keep self-abandoning by not respecting our own boundary, but then expecting others to respect it.
I really like how you explain that, and it helps me understand it, from my own point of view and my own experiences a little bit better, because boundaries being for me rather than the other person, I don't think that's the way I would have looked at it until a couple years ago or whatever, when I started kind of this healing process, or getting deep into this healing process and really understanding what that meant. And you're 100% right. Like, because I grew up without boundaries, it does lead to no self-respect, and therefore no respect for others, because that wasn't a thing in my household. And then also to not having the foundation to build upon. Like you said, if you're not ready for that boundary, it's just going to fall apart as soon as somebody tests it.
When we don't respect ourselves and we don't stand with our boundary, then that leads to resentment, and then we get angry, but we project it, being like it's this person's fault.
Yes.
Because we don't want to take accountability for the fact that we're not doing what we need to do for ourselves to maintain that self-respect. And we are hurting ourselves, and instead of looking at the hurt we're causing ourselves, we want to make it other people's responsibility. You see it all the time.
100%.
People are just projecting their own hurt outwardly, and they're not taking accountability. And that's a big piece as well.
And it's understandable, like we've all been there before in that hurt place, and it's that's why they say hurt people, right? And it is understandable, but it's so important to get a footing and get yourself a good foundation so that you can start to build real strength. And you reminded me of what I was going to say. You had mentioned shame. Shame, how shame comes into all of this as well when you don't have good boundaries or self-respect or anything like that. And I think, now that I've come as far as I've come, I look back and I think that toxic shame, more than anything else, was the thing holding me back. More than, the anger was on the surface, the anxiety, that was maybe just a touch deeper, but really where I'm at now, getting closer and closer to the never ending core wounds. Toxic shame has been very debilitating in my lifetime. Do you mind talking about toxic shame a little bit?
I mean, what I'll say, Brene Brown does a great example of the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is about, oh, I did something. Shame is, it means something about me. Shame, in my opinion, is the deepest, coming back to the body keeps the score. The deepest, I would say, and I'm going to use my own self as an example. I carried so much shame. I would describe it when I started healing it. It literally felt like toxic in my muscles. And it felt like this thing that was just stuck, like these, like, I don't know, I think of like Alien, or like, like globs of like aliens that are like, look like oil that like move around. I don't know what
the
that's
blob.
from. Kind of like the blob, right? Shame is like the blob in your body that holds on to your hips and in your back and in your belly and in like different areas. And it's like, it seeps in us. And it means something about me. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I'm not enough. This is something that means that's detrimental to me personally, that just weighs us down. And shame is a really hard thing to work through, because you gotta feel, like, in order to move through, you gotta feel it. And like, nobody wants to feel that depth of like, I'm not worthy. Like, I was taught I'm not worthy, right? And now I actually have to feel that, but then I also have to start showing myself that I am, right? I have to start debunking that toxic shame, right? But it seeps in our body. It's deeply embedded. And like, I mean, like I said, Brene Brown does a great lecture all about shame and how it just impacts us on a big level.
Well, and we can talk probably for a whole hour just about shame on its own.
I know.
But yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's one of those things that you do carry around in your body. And, as soon as I started releasing some of this deeper stuff, it really was like a mountain that I no longer have to carry. I was talking with Dustin Gilbert a little while back on an earlier podcast, and he said something about how the mustard seed can move mountains, and it's because the mustard seed was within you the whole time, and so was the mountain. And that's kind of the point. Like, we weigh ourselves down with these negative coping skills and these beliefs that are not true, and then we go through life with these, ball and chains just dragging and holding us down and holding us back. And that's really, it's so freeing to be able to just like look in the mirror and say, yeah, that happened to me, and you know what, I want to move on, or I want to move forward, or yeah, I did that and it sucks, I can't change it though, I want to move forward, and truly release it, whatever it is you have to do to release it, because it does feel like part of you, the heaviness of your own body just melts away.
It's easy in theory, because if you think about, if you have carried something with you for so long,
Mm-hmm.
for 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
let's say you've carried that mountain for 40 years and somebody's like, put the mountain down. You're like, well, I'm kind of attached to it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, what would my life look like without that mountain? Like, what if I need it?
Yep.
Like, it's kind of protected me. It's made me feel safe in ways, no matter how heavy it is or how hard it is to climb. Like, it makes me feel safe,
Yep.
right? Chaos. It makes me feel safe. I know I need to just put it down. So in theory, yeah, you just stop it.
Right. It's not
Right?
not so easy though.
In theory,
Yep.
you just let it go.
Yeah.
All right, just
Yeah.
let go. But because it's so deeply embedded,
Mm-hmm.
right? People say all the time, like, oh, I love myself. But then when you start breaking it down, in their minds, they love themselves, but nothing in their body
Mm-hmm.
actually believes or supports that theory. So
Yes.
that's the big disconnect, coming back to the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like our body is used to a certain dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start pushing up against that dysregulation to change it,
Mm-hmm.
the body freaks out. It feels like death sometimes. It goes into a panic because it's like, this is so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, me just sitting doing nothing. What do you mean? Like, that's really uncomfortable, right? That comes back to the body. It's, in theory, it's easy,
Mm-hmm.
but really when you get into it, it becomes a part of you that you need to start detaching.
So what you're saying is the body keeps the score.
You like how we just wrapped that all around?
Boom!
Like, we kind of took a big left turn and then came back.
There will never be a better segue in a podcast ever than that was right there. All other podcasts can now retire. This one will be the only one moving forward. There it is. Your body really does remember these things when maybe your mind doesn't. Because like I said earlier, memories have been coming back to me very recently about my childhood. Memories that I did not have, up until very recently. It was so traumatic that I suppressed it, and now I'm starting to remember because my body this whole time really has kept the score, and my mind is starting to catch up now. But what does that mean to you?
I think the biggest thing that comes to me when you're talking about that is I think about parts of us get fragmented in time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you're moving through life and a big trauma happens or you feel unsafe. You get stuck. Your body literally gets like stuck in time. So there's an emotional part of you that gets just frozen in time there.
Okay.
Your growth gets stunted in a way, and you get trapped here, right? Because it didn't get to release. It didn't get to move through, right? So anytime you move through life and something triggers this event, I call it inner child work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Anytime you're moving through life and like something impacts you and it reminds you of that time, this part of your child actually takes over the present you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it has the reaction that it needed to have or that it didn't get to have to be seen. But what happens is after you have the reaction, oftentimes we come back to the present moment and we're like, what the hell just happened? It feels like an outer body experience because it's not actually you of the present, because you're actually safe. Like there's this, I use an emotional scale. If you experience something in life and you go off on a 10 when it should be like a 5, that's not you of the present.
Yeah.
That's something deeper that's happening that's creating this significant emotional reaction. That's essentially the body's holding on to something. And usually when it starts coming out like that, it's because it wants to be seen. It wants to be heard. It wants to be released.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's something there that wants to be released.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is what I do in sessions with things like this is I help you understand where this came from, why it happened, and then I help you connect with that part of yourself. And essentially what you have to do is the present you literally has to talk to that part. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, I see that you're angry and you're upset. That's okay. Like, I'm sorry you weren't heard and seen in that. You're okay. I got you. Like, you actually have to, like, convince. I look at it as, like, two parts. You have to kind of convince that younger part that it's safe, that it's okay. Yep. And you have to, like, continue to show that part that it's safe. Then the integration begins, where then you start, oh, I am safe. I don't have to react, right? And then you can start releasing that energy that's been trapped in that part of your body.
Yeah, and the whole time you were saying that before you mentioned inner child, I was thinking this sounds like inner child. That could be a whole nother podcast on its own, inner child for sure. But one thing I will add to that real quick is when I started to look, things really changed for me, not only with the curiosity, I shed some fear and I got more curious, but when I was able to look at my life objectively as if it was someone else's life. I was almost able to, metaphorically step back and say, okay, what are the things that I'm doing that don't serve me, that hold me back? And you're right, a lot of it boiled down to I had neglected my inner child for so long that they were driving the car. They had taken over and they were doing things to sabotage me that I sometimes wouldn't even know why I was doing what I was doing. And then once I pieced it together, it made sense. I was like, okay, this deep wounded piece of me that has kept the score is so hurt that it needs the right kind of attention in order for us to both move forward together. And that was game changer.
And what happens in those moments too is your body goes from neutral to dysregulation. Right? Yep. And it takes over.
Yep.
And what happens often in trauma, one side of your brain actually shuts down. The logical side of your brain usually shuts down. The emotional side of your brain takes control. Which is why it feels disoriented and kind of dissociative, right? It's because logic down, emotion up, parts of our brain shut off, and now we're just reacting, right? Body's going into fight, flight, or freeze. And whatever that is for you, oftentimes some people shut down, right? Or they'll react and then they shut down, right? There can be two reactions of that trauma. Again, it comes down to getting familiar with the body, right? You have to start to notice, like, okay, my body's starting to get worked up, right? And it feels like in order to survive, it has to do this thing. It literally feels like I have to do this in order. Anxious attachment, we'll talk about this more when we do relationships, but I'll just give you an example for myself. I went through a period of time with my abandonment wound was so big that I literally was like, I felt I had to, like, if I liked a guy, like I would have to text constantly, or like I need him to answer me. So I would can't just send text to get a response because I literally was so scared of abandonment that like I felt like it was life or death. Like because my system was so amped up and dysregulated that it was overwhelmed and it wouldn't feel better until I got what I needed. Right? And 100%. That's not us that's things being so out of control. We think we're in control, but it's actually the opposite. Like internally, we are completely out of control. And that's the dysregulation of the system.
Yeah, well said yet again. And, we're going to talk many times. You're going to keep coming back on this podcast, I hope, till the end of time. And we could talk each episode about abandonment and inner child and all this other stuff could probably
they're all together. They are all together.
They are all together for sure, because it does really all work together to be one. But my point is there's so much to say about each of these topics that it could really fill an hour on its own. But you started with dysregulation of the nervous system and the body, you know, not being in line with the mind and all that sort of thing. And that's, I know, a big part of what you do is you get people back in line, and on the same page with themselves. But to finish up, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do, where people can find you, who you can help, and that sort of thing.
Before I do that, I just want to add a few things with the
Please.
body keeps the score, because we talked about dysregulation and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about how we have to activate the parasympathetic nervous system and the
Mm-hmm.
suppression of emotions.
Sure.
So I just want to bring in kind of some solutions of like things like breath work is really good, like learning how to breathe, deep belly breathing,
Mm-hmm.
exhalation longer than the inhalation. That's really going to help calm people down and activate that parasympathetic nervous system. Movement, gentle movement, yoga,
Mm-hmm.
any type of movement in the body, stretching, working out is actually really good too. Like
Mm-hmm.
for men, if men have a really hard time getting into some of those deeper emotions, pushing themselves really hard at the gym, like to exhaustion, sprinting as fast as you can, or doing as many push-ups as you can, like as fast as you can, all anything that'll get you to exhaustion kind of forces the wall to
Mm-hmm.
drop
Mm-hmm.
and can create an emotional response. Like that's a big one, I think, for men, which can be really helpful.
Sure.
But like, it's really how do you start connecting to your body if you're so disconnected from your body? Movement, breathing, meditation, anything that is slowing the body down that stops you, even if your brain is running, how can you slow the body and start bringing the attention to the body?
Mm.
Like, I just kind of wanted to bring some, like,
Yes.
kind of solution of, like, if these are things you want to start, like, trying to do to get more connected, those are ways that can help.
No,
So,
I'm glad you did. Thank you for adding that. I'm trying to be mindful of your time because I could talk to you about this kind of stuff and other stuff all day long. So I want to be
oh, me
mindful.
too.
I want to be mindful of your time because I know you have clients later today. So yeah, is there anything else that you want to say to finish up with?
The curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity is key.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring it back to curiosity. Curiosity is key in everything that we do because oftentimes we think we know, and really it's our own assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Never assume you know what the other person is thinking or doing.
Yeah.
Always be curious about yourself and other people because that is like a game changer in multiple ways. So just being curious, if somebody says something, get curious about, instead of assuming you know why they're saying it, ask.
Yeah.
We forget to ask questions.
Totally.
Like we just get so lost in our own stuff. And so like I just kind of wanted to wrap in the curiosity piece because never assume that the more you know, the less you know. They say the more you know, the less you know. And so, like for me personally, all this work that I've done, all this healing I've gone through, it really comes down to like, I really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm teaching the things that have helped me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I'm really going off of like my own experiences and what I've learned from other people that has helped other people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, really, when it comes down to it, we really don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're getting into philosophy, but
Yeah.
curiosity is key. Curiosity is key.
No, I agree. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind is that everyone is different. Everyone has different experiences. Everybody responds differently. And so there is no blanket cure for any of this. There's no cure at all, in fact. And it's always going to be a journey and a process in order to better yourself and to, get on the same page with yourself and move forward in alignment. So I
Yes.
think that is important. That is an important piece for people to hear.
Beautiful.
I wanted to hear a little bit more about what it is you do, who it is you can help. Like, if there's somebody out there listening to this and they happen to be in Oklahoma or whatever, can they reach out to you? Like,
Oh yeah.
like who are you out there helping, and how can they find you basically?
So one thing I like to say is like a lot of my clients have been in therapy for years and years and years and haven't ever really gone anywhere. I'm not a traditional therapist in the sense that I'm utilizing a lot of different techniques and modalities within my practice that I have found. I call myself a no bullshit therapist. So we're not just going to sit around and talk. I actually give you assignments. I have you do things and we get down to business. Like, I'm not just going to sit there and listen to you talk all session. Like, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to point things out that are going to be difficult for you to hear. But the goal is to help you understand and create more awareness for yourself. It's also to get you in tune with your body. So I try to use a lot of somatic practices to help. Sometimes I work with clients for a month and they can get in their body like that. Sometimes I work with clients 4 to 6 months before they start to feel safe enough to get into their body. Everybody is different, but it's not, you can't force it. I cannot heal you. I do not heal my clients. Just disclaimer. I am not doing the healing. I am a guide.
But Murga the podcast said so you could heal me.
I'm a guide, and I think that's really important because essentially what it is I'm the guide that's taking you up the mountain. You ask somebody to take you up a mountain, right? I did Mount St. Helens last year. I asked Molly Taylor, take me up the mountain, right? It's, you have a guide that leads you through things that they've been through before. I have done the hard work. I did it the hardest way probably possible. So what I'm trying to help you do is not take the long way, right? I tried to do it all on my own for a really long time, and it was very difficult. What I'm trying to do is help create a path to help guide you through it. But essentially, you have to do the work yourself. You have to be willing to take the chances and push yourself into discomfort and do things that are not going to feel good to get you to the place where you're looking to go. So if you're tired, if you feel like trauma has been keeping you back, if you feel like you have everything in life that you could possibly have and you are not happy or joy, and you find that there's like heaviness, you're probably carrying something that you need to let go of. Or you're living like you feel like you have to constantly go, go, go. You don't know how to meet your own needs. Like, really what I'm trying to do is help you come back to the present moment and create more clarity and awareness in your life.
Yeah. And you know, to some people, I can understand it sounding a little scary, a little anxiety inducing to be like, oh, she's going to point out my bullshit and I'm going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm going to have to heal myself. But that is the way that it works. And I can speak from personal experience, recent personal experience, that once you commit to the process and you do get far enough along, that you look back and you're glad that you did it yourself. You're glad that you took the time to really do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, because you have to, and it's empowering. Eventually you get real strength, real confidence, and you get real empowerment from doing the process, yourself. However, we all need a guide in this world. We all need as much help as we can get, and mentorship and guides are so crucial to help us get where we want to be so much faster and with the least amount of pain. So, and I can...
Well, I think of it as like, if you're working on a project and you keep hitting the same, you can't get, like, you're working on a project and you keep hitting a wall, wall. Don't you want somebody to come in and be like, oh, this is actually what I'm seeing is you're missing this piece right here. You need to now start moving in this direction. At first, it's going to be hard. You want to continue to do it the same way that you've been doing it. But somebody's coming in and showing you a more efficient way, or like giving you new information, right? Yeah, first it's going to be weird to do it differently. It's, but at the same time, once you're aware of the pattern, now you get to decide if you want to continue to utilize that new pattern. At that point, when you start to create more awareness, now you get to choose at that point, right? You get to start deciding, do I want to take the suggestion and start showing up differently? Or do I want to continue to let the old patterns and the ego run my life?
And that goes along with the empowerment, 100%. Because, for so much of my life, I felt like I had no agency. And now I feel like I have all the agency, and it's because I have choices, and there obviously there are varying degrees of all of this, varying degrees of choices and everything that people go through. But I can personally attest to the fact that you are amazing at what you do, and you're truly gifted at this stuff, and you have a great knowledge base. So I've had a really great time having this conversation with you today, and I want to say thank you. And is there any other parting words of wisdom that you might have?
Yeah, I just want to say I do individual work. I also might be starting a group coaching call this fall. So like group coaching as far as like getting a group of people online or possibly locally in person, and doing community, like working through it together, right? And developing a call like that, which might be a little more affordable for people, and you're going to get a bulk of the work, and like how to do things. So I might be doing that. You can go to my website. I have a new website.
Okay. I will have all of this in the description below.
Okay,
so you don't have
perfect.
to find it right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you can find me on the
Yep.
website, phone number, email address.
Perfect.
I work online, so I do Zoom meetings, I do in person. But it's really just, if you're looking for something different, if you want to understand yourself more and have more freedom in life, like that's what I'm here to do. Is I just want to help people. Like that's my goal in life. Like that's what I want my legacy to be. I want my legacy for people to look back and be like, wow, she helped me change my life. Like, and she gave me a safe space. And it's really about giving back. I really believe that's what my purpose is. And that's what I've been brought here to do, is to just help guide people and teach them love, essentially.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and you're wonderful at it. So I'm sure that things are just going to keep getting better and better for you in this space, because as time goes on, you get better and better at it, and you were already born for this sort of thing. So
thank you,
Gina. I admire you very much. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I know we didn't do much on The Body Keeps the Score, but I think we got a lot of information in here.
Yeah, we might talk about it again, because there is a lot to talk about, but you're right. All of this stuff goes together. We're going to be doing a long series on this kind of stuff with each other, so look out for upcoming episodes, more episodes with Gina, definitely on the way, talking about this stuff and other stuff. And yeah, we might circle back around to Body Keeps the Score, because there's a lot of notes that I took that we didn't get to. So, it's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, do so. If there's any piece of you that's curious, start there. Start with reaching out to Gina. She's very approachable. And my advice to anyone who's struggling in any way is just get curious. Get curious as to why.
He also did a podcast episode on Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett.
Oh yeah.
I think it was in December of 2024. You have to kind of go back a little bit, but that podcast, it's so good. So good. And so if you don't want to read the book, go listen to the podcast.
I hear they don't have as good a segues as Murga the podcast.
Oh, definitely not. Murga is like, the best.
King of segues.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great. I can talk about this stuff all day as well.
Yep,
so,
and we will talk
next time.
And we will talk more next time. So thanks for joining us today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the conversation, took something from it. Please share it with other people who you think might need to hear this, might need to reach out to Gina, or want to watch more conversations like this. I have a conversation that I had with a guy named Dustin Gilbert about the manosphere, and we talk all about toxic masculinity and things like that. That's just a few weeks ago, so you'll find it here on the channel. I'll link it below, whatever. I'm still figuring out this YouTube stuff, and we will figure it out together next time on Murga the podcast. Have a good day.
Bye.
So what you're saying is the body keeps the score. There will never be a better segue in a podcast ever. All other podcasts can now retire. This one will be the only one moving forward.